If you're interested in smashing shorter distances, you may be asking, are long runs even necessary? In this video, Brad and I are going to unpack whether you need long runs or not, how long they need to be, what the benefits are of long runs, and what are the things to avoid for your long runs, especially as a female runner over the age of 45.
All right, so my wife is enjoying her running, but she's not a huge fan of the long runs. What is the actual benefits of doing long runs?
Couple of things, Brad. First and foremost, the long run is important for your aerobic capacity, right? The engine for while we are running. As we age, we tend to lose that endurance over time. We're actually losing the density or the amount of mitochondria. And so we have to do our long runs because that is essentially what helps build that endurance back. And actually, as we are running long, we tend to generate more and more mitochondria. For anyone who doesn't know, the mitochondria are essentially your little powerhouses or coal houses of the cell. That's where we get all our energy from.
Okay, that's super interesting, Shona. So aside from the aerobic benefits, what else do long runs help with?
Yeah, exactly. The aerobic benefit is building that engine. But one of the very interesting things that I don't think a lot of people know about is that it also helps teach your body to use lactate as a fuel source. People think that lactic acid is the thing that causes resistance and fatigue. It's really not. It's not the bad guy that everyone makes it out to be. The fitter we get, the more able our cells are able to use lactate as an energy source. So pyruvate essentially gets converted into lactate, and lactate goes back into the mitochondria and is used as a fuel source, essentially allowing you to have better endurance and be a much stronger runner. And so something that we thought caused fatigue, being lactate, is not actually the case.
Right, that's super interesting, Shona. So talking about long runs, how do long runs help with fatigue?
What they do, Brad, is that it helps you build resistance to the fatigue. So let's say you start running and your long run is 1 hour, you recover, there's super compensation, you get stronger and fitter, and then all of a sudden you can run for 1 hour and 20 minutes, and so on and so on. So we're building a slow resistance to fatigue in these long runs.
So long runs are all about progression then, right?
Exactly, Brad. Progression is really important. We know that in order to become aerobically fit, you have to increase your volume of training. But we can't just jump and go and run what Kipchoge runs. We have to build that nice and slowly. So if we're running 100 Ks a week or 60 miles a week, we can't just suddenly jump up to going at 80 miles a week. We need to build that nice and slowly so as to avoid injury, so as to ensure that we really are getting the recovery as we are going through.
All right, so talking about injury, how do long runs affect your muscles and tendons and ligaments?
The long runs are important for this exact reason, because as you are loading, with running being such a cyclic sport, right foot, left foot, right foot, left foot, we need to ensure that our muscles and our tendons and our ligaments are all very, very strong. And by doing our long runs, we're ensuring that those musculoskeletal structures are getting that exact loading every single week. It's also really, really key to know that as we are perhaps going through menopause or perimenopause, there is this increase in different hormones that affects ligaments to become a lot more lax. And so we have to ensure that we're doing enough strength training with those long runs to, again, reduce the risk of injuries.
Okay, Shona, that makes a lot of sense, but I've also heard that long runs help you mentally. Can you explain that?
Yeah, whether you are running a shorter distance or a longer distance, I believe that long runs help allow you to get over that mental aspect of being able to push through. Anyone who's done a long run will know that at some points it gets a little bit boring. You have to entertain yourself somehow. You're stuck with your mind, and you may utilize things like podcasts or music to help get you through. And so that ability to know that you are able to endure something for an extended period of time makes sense in terms of then if you're fighting, or training for a marathon, but even the shorter distances. Being able to know that you can endure pain or being in the hurt box for a certain amount of time really has a good element of training our mental capacity as well.
All right, cool. So from a mental side, huge benefits, but let's talk about fueling and nutrition for long runs and how long runs impact your nutrition.
Yeah, very interesting, and I think it's great because we want to be able to practice our nutrition. Our gut, our digestive system is very trainable, and so if we do something on race day without practicing it, you can actually really have a bad race day. So you want to ensure that you're training your gut, practicing your nutrition routine with your sort of intensity that you're running at on race day to ensure that our gut is going to respond well to the nutrition we're giving it. For example, you could practice your breakfast that you're having before your long run, which would then elicit the same as a race day. So ensuring that the breakfast you're having doesn't negatively affect your gut, so that come race day, you're sorted.
All right, so basically what you're saying is these long runs are like a dress rehearsal for your race day nutrition. Shona, let's now jump into sort of the mistakes, the common mistakes that you see people making on their long runs.
Yeah, the first of these is runners like to use their long runs as a test. They like to see how fit they are, engage their fitness in their long runs. We don't want to do this. You want to keep those tests for your time trials and for your race day. The second mistake is not increasing your long runs gradually enough. So as I mentioned earlier, starting somewhere and then jumping up way too soon. And so we want to ensure that we gently progress those runs as we go. And the third mistake, and this is a really, really big one, is that runners are not running their easy and long runs easy enough.
All right, so essentially it's all about being controlled and easy.
Very much so. So those long runs really need to feel easy. Of course, they're going to be long, so they do take a little bit out of you, but they shouldn't be run too hard. You also can utilize things like walking breaks in these long runs to allow you to go much further for so much longer. These walk breaks should not be seen as a weakness. They really should be seen as a bit of as a superpower. So you want to perhaps add a walk break every 3 to 6 kilometers, and the walk break isn't long. It may be 60 to 90 seconds. Again, a great opportunity to then take your nutrition in those different sort of time slots.
All right, Shona, let's now talk about how long. How long should your long runs actually be?
Brad, this question, it's always the favorite sports scientist or coach answer is it depends. And it really does depend. It depends on what your goal is, what you're racing, what your ability is, how long you've been running, where you are in your training plan. All of these things take a role in how long we determine your long run should be. The long run that you decide to do will really depend on your race distance as well. So if you're aiming for a shorter race, if you're doing a 5K or a 10K, it's likely that you're going to cover that distance in your long run, maybe even for a half marathon. But when we're talking about marathons and ultras, we don't want to be covering that distance necessarily in your training, specifically because if you're covering 42 Ks in your training, you are then going to require so many more recovery days to get over that effort you've just done. And so we're losing training time. I'd far rather we have those 3 or 4 days extra training time as opposed to hitting that distance in your training and then not training for 4 days because you need to recover. Long runs are just one piece of the puzzle. If you're not doing all the other key components in your training plan, you will not be the best runner that you can be. It's time to take a look at the common training mistakes that could be holding you back, especially if you are a female runner over the age of 45. Watch this video next, where I'll show you old training methods that no longer work and how to adjust your training, strength, and recovery to boost your performance and stay injury-free.